Hello everyone and welcome to part 4 of story time with me, Miss Lumley. So it's a bit of a rainy, miserable afternoon outside, so let's all get snuggled up, and today we're going to carry on with chapter 4 and chapter 5, so we're going to have 2 chapters tonight. So chapter 4 is called Wanting to Disappear. "Morning, Dennis, or should I say Denise," said John, laughing cruelly. "I told you not to mention it," said Dad, sternly, as he coated his white toast with an inch thick layer of butter. When Mum was around, she'd have made him have margarine and brown bread. Dennis slumped down at the kitchen table in silence, not even looking at his brother. He poured himself some Rice Krispies. "Seen any nice dresses recently?" taunted John. He laughed again. "I told you to leave it alone," said Dad, even louder than before. "Magazines like that are for girls and woofters." "Shut up," said Dad. Dennis suddenly didn't feel hungry anymore and picked up his bag and walked out of the door. He slammed it behind him. He could still hear Dad saying, "What did I say, John? It's over, okay? It's in the bin." Dennis walked unwillingly to school. He didn't want to be at home or at school. He was afraid his brother would tell somebody and he'd be laughed at. He just wanted to disappear. When he was much younger, he used to believe that if he closed his eyes, no one else could see him. Right now, he wished that was true. The first lesson of the day was history. Dennis liked history. They were studying the Tudor dynasty, and he loved looking at the pictures of the kings and queens in all their finery, especially Elizabeth I, who really knew how to power dress. An expression he had read in Vogue next to the shoot of a model in a beautifully cut business suit. But Dennis always found chemistry, the next lesson, mind-numbingly boring. He spent most of the lesson staring at the periodic table, trying to fathom what it was. When break time came, Dennis played football as usual in the playground with his friends. He was having fun until he saw John with a group of his mates, the bad boys with short hair who the careers advisors would probably advise to become nightclub bouncers or criminals. They ambled through the middle of the makeshift pitch. Dennis held his breath. John nodded at his brother but said nothing. Dennis let out a sigh of relief. Whew. He was pretty sure his brother couldn't have told anyone that he'd bought a woman's fashion magazine. After all, Darvesh was playing football with him as he always did. They played with an old tennis ball that Darvesh's dog Oddbod had chewed. It was a school rule that footballs weren't allowed in the playground in case a window got broken. Darvesh set Dennis up to score with a daring cross. Then Dennis headed the ball and it flew too high up past what was meant to be the goal and through the window of the headmaster's office. John and his friends stared, mouths open. The playground fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop in the unlikely event that someone had dropped a pin at that exact moment. "Oops," said Darvesh. "Yes, oops," said Dennis. Oops was really an understatement. The headmaster, Mr. Hawtrey, hated children. Actually, he hated everybody, probably even himself. He wore an immaculate 3-piece grey suit with a charcoal-coloured tie and dark-framed glasses. His hair was meticulously combed and parted, and he had a thin black moustache. It was as if he actively wanted to look sinister, and he had a face that someone who has spent their whole life grimacing ends up with, a permanently grimacing one. "He might not be in his office," ventured Darvesh hopefully. "Maybe," said Dennis, gulping. At that moment the headmaster's face peered out of the window. "School!" he bellowed. The playground fell silent. "Who kicked this ball?" He held the tennis ball between his fingers with the same sense of disgust that dog owners do when they are forced to pick up their dog's doo-doo. Dennis was too scared to say anything. "I asked a question. Who kicked it?" Dennis gulped. I didn't kick it, sir, he offered tentatively. But I did header it. Detention today, boy. 4 o'clock. Thank you, sir, said Dennis, not sure what else to say. Because of your behaviour, all ball games in the playground are banned for today, added Mr. Hawtrey, before disappearing back into his study. A sigh of angry disappointment echoed around the playground. Dennis hated it when teachers did that, when they made everyone suffer to make you unpopular with your classmates. It was a cheap trick. Don't worry, Dennis, said Darvish. Everyone knows Mr. Hawtrey's a total. Yeah, I know. They sat on their bags by the wall of the science block and opened their lunch boxes, devouring the sandwiches that were meant for lunch. Dennis hadn't told Darvish about buying Vogue, but he wanted to find out what his friend thought about it, in a roundabout way. Darvish was Sikh, and he was in the same year as Dennis and only 12, so he didn't wear a turban yet. He wore a patka, a bobble hat type thing that kept his hair out of his face. That's because Sikh men aren't supposed to cut their hair. There were lots of different types of kids at school, but Darvish was the only one who wore a patka. And there's a picture, look, of Dennis and Darvish wearing his patka. Do you feel different, Darvish? Asked Dennis. In what way? Well, just, you're the only boy in school who has to wear one of those things on your head. Oh, that, yeah, well, with my family, of course I don't. And when my mum took me to India at Christmas to visit Grandma, I didn't at all. All the Sikh boys were wearing them. But at school? At first I did, yes. I felt a bit embarrassed because I knew I looked different to everyone. Yeah. And then I suppose as people got to know me, they realised I wasn't really that different. I just wear this funny thing on my head, he laughed. Dennis laughed too. Yeah, you're just my mate, Darvish. I don't really think about the thing on your head at all. In fact, I'd quite like one. No, you wouldn't. It itches like hell. But it would be boring if we were all the same, wouldn't it? It certainly would, Dennis smiled. That's the end of chapter 4. So chapter 5, just doodling. Dennis had never had detention before, so in a way he was quite looking forward to it. When he turned up at classroom 4C to report to the French teacher, Miss Windsor, he noticed there was only one other person who had been sentenced to an hour's incarceration. It was Lisa. Lisa James. Only the most beautiful girl in school. She was super cool too, and somehow she always made her school uniform look like it was a costume in a pop video. Even though they had never spoken, Dennis had a really big crush on Lisa. Not that anything would ever happen though. Her being 2 years older and 6 inches taller made her literally out of reach. Hi, Lisa said. She had a gorgeous voice, rough round the edges but soft inside. Oh, hi. Dennis pretended not to remember her name. Lisa, what's your name? Dennis thought for a moment about changing his name to something a bit cooler, like Brad or Dirk, to try and impress her, but realised that would be insane. Dennis. Hi, Dennis, said Lisa. What are you in for? I headed a ball into Hawtrey's office. Cool, said Lisa, laughing. Dennis laughed a little too. She obviously assumed that he had headed the ball into the headmaster's office on purpose, and he wasn't about to correct her. What about you? Asked Dennis. I wasn't wearing the correct school uniform. This time Hawtrey said my skirt was too short. Dennis looked down at Lisa's skirt. It was quite short. I don't care really, she continued. I'd rather wear what I want and get the odd detention now and again. Sorry, interrupted Miss Windsor. There's not really meant to be any talking in detention. Miss Windsor was one of the nice teachers who didn't really enjoy telling pupils off. She would usually say, "Excuse me," or "Sorry," before she did. She was probably in her late 40s. Miss Windsor didn't wear a wedding ring or seem to have any kids. She liked to exude a little French sophistication, throwing colourful silk scarves around her shoulder with a mock nonchalance, and devouring 4 packs of croissants from Tesco Metro at break time. "Sorry, Miss Windsor," said Lisa. Dennis and Lisa smiled at each other. Dennis got back to his lines. "I must not header balls into the headmaster's window. I must not header balls into the headmaster's window. I must not header balls into the headmaster's window." He looked over at what Lisa was doing. Instead of her lines, she was idly sketching some dress designs. A ball gown with a plunging back looked like it wouldn't be out of place in Vogue. She turned over the page and started sketching a strapless top and pencil skirt. Next to that, she drew a long flowing white suit that went in and out in all the right places. Lisa clearly had a real flair for fashion. "Excuse me," said Miss Windsor, "but you should really concentrate on your own work, Dennis." "Sorry, miss," said Dennis. He started his lines again. "I must not header balls into the headmaster's window." Dennis sighed and rubbed out the last few lines. He was getting distracted. After about 45 minutes, Miss Windsor looked at her watch anxiously and addressed the class of 2. "I'm sorry," she said, "but would either of you mind if we finished this detention 15 minutes early? Only I would quite like to get home in time for neighbours. Lassiter's coffee shop is reopening today after the dramatic fire." "No problem, miss," said Lisa, smiling. "Don't worry, we won't tell anyone." "Thank you," said Miss Windsor, confused for a moment that somehow the roles had been reversed and it was Dennis and Lisa who were letting her off. "Do you want to walk me home, Dennis?" asked Lisa. "What?" said Dennis in a panic. "I said, do you want to walk me home?" Yeah, okay," said Dennis, trying to sound cool. Dennis felt like a celebrity as he walked down the road with Lisa. He walked slowly so he could be with her for as long as possible. "I couldn't help noticing your drawings, those dress designs. They're brilliant," said Dennis. "Oh, thanks. They were nothing really. I was just doodling." "And I love the way you look." "Thank you," replied Lisa, trying not to laugh. "I mean dress," Dennis corrected himself. "Dress. I love the way you dress." "Thanks," said Lisa, smiling again. She looked so unutterably gorgeous when she smiled that Dennis could barely look at her. Instead, he looked down at her shoes, noticing they were round-toed. There's a picture, look, of Dennis and Lisa walking home. "Beautiful shoes," he offered. "Well, thank you for noticing." "Apparently round-toe shoes are in this year. Pointy-toed are out." "Where did you read that?" "Vogue. You read Vogue?" Dennis caught his breath. What had he said? In all the excitement of being with Lisa, his tongue was running away with itself. No, well, yeah, once. I think that's cool." "You do?" asked Dennis, incredulous. "Yeah, not nearly enough boys are into fashion." "I suppose not," Dennis said. He wasn't sure if he was into fashion or just liked looking at pictures of pretty dresses, but he chose not to mention it. "Do you have a favourite designer?" Lisa asked. Dennis wasn't sure if he did, but he remembered really liking one of the dresses in the magazine, a cream floor-length ball gown designed by John Galley something. "John Galley something," he said. "John Galliano? Yeah, he's amazing, a legend. He designs all the pieces for Dior too." Dennis loved that she said pieces. That was the word they'd used in Vogue for items of clothes. "Well, this is my house. Thanks, Dennis. Bye," said Lisa. Dennis's heart sank a little that their walk was already over. She went to go towards the front door, then stopped for a moment. You could come over at the weekend if you like, she said. I've got loads of great fashion magazines I could show you. I really want to be a designer or a stylist or something when I'm older. Well, you are very stylish, said Dennis. He meant it sincerely, but somehow it sounded cheesy. Thank you, said Lisa. She knew she was. Everyone knew she was. It's Saturday tomorrow. Is 11 o'clock any good for you? I think so, said Dennis, as if any event in his past or future could prevent him from being at her house at 11. See you then, she said, as she gave him a smile and passed out of view. And just like that, Dennis's world went back to normal again, like when the lights go on in the cinema at the end of the film. And there we go for today, boys and girls. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye.